evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and this evening we're continuing our discussions with the candidates for the coming election. And this evening's guest is the candidate for City Councilor At Large, Ms. Bowen.
Yes, thanks for
Hannah
having me
Bowen.
here. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, you're running for At Large. When you get the job, what do you think is the most important thing to think about or work on?
Well, I think the most important job of an at-large city councilor is to really listen to and look for ideas from the whole city. So it's really balancing the needs of, people who are concerned about their taxes going up against people who are concerned about city services not delivering everything they need. It's finding those compromises across neighborhoods, across different people's needs, and really taking that full view. So for me, there are a lot of really nitty-gritty issues that I'm interested in working on policy-wise, but the job, I think, that I'm asking for voters to trust me with is really about listening, starting that conversation, having the public debate about our priorities, and helping guide our whole city government in the direction that the city wants to move.
Well, you just went through the exercise of gathering signatures to get on the ballot. And for At Large, you have to get signatures from all the wards.
Yep.
So as you went around knocking on doors with your little pad, what are you hearing?
Yeah, so hearing a lot. And so I did my signatures back in May, June. You have to have at least 100. You have to cover the whole city. Yeah. And it really was a great way to get to meet some more people. But now I'm back out just going door to door again across the whole city, really asking what do people want in their next city councilor, and could that be me? And hearing a lot of similar themes, a lot of, kind of basic city services that I think especially over the last year where people have been home a lot more are really feeling, like the pothole out in front of their house, or whether the trash is getting picked up on time, or whether the recyclables are separated out. So some of those like pain points for people are coming up, and I think it is important, even though a lot of those functions are under the mayor's control and part of City Hall and city departments, city councilors have a big role to play in highlighting where there are improvements that could be made, and, just, again, helping balance those needs across the city. But also, hearing a lot about people seeing changes in the city and changes in the world and wanting to make sure that our city government remains responsive to the people of Beverly and protects the great things about our city, the open spaces we have, the friendly neighborhoods. And so it's really encouraging to hear those things. I think after people have spent so much time in this disrupted life from the pandemic, really just connecting with people again and hearing that they are optimistic and that even though they have some gripes here and there, that they are looking forward to what comes next and are ready to trust our city government with the responsibility of leading us there. So it's just reinforced. The more time I spend out talking to people, the more I want to be a part of the city council.
You mentioned changes, and this has been one of my ongoing questions about you. Beverly is in the middle of a change. It always is.
Yeah.
And we start to talk about the character of the city, and you mentioned a couple of features like the open spaces and the systems that are in place that are some working not as good as we'd like. Yeah. But I guess the question is, where do you think the city is going, or would you like to see the city go?
Yeah, so I think although it's been a challenging time, also a really exciting time for the city because we are growing. We are not just a commuter city into Boston right now. People are really looking at living and working in Beverly. And we want to make sure that everyone can continue to do that who wants to, that it remains affordable as we grow. And I think that we, attract businesses that want to be supportive of the community, so that give back to youth programs that, participate in community events. just this last weekend, being out at the Beverly Main Street's Arts Fest event, it was so great to see all of that energy. And a lot of the artists and craftspeople who were there were new to Beverly. I talked to several people. It was their first time participating in that kind of event here, and they all want to come back because of what we're creating. And I see us moving more in that direction. When
you say new to Beverly, do they actually live here, or this is the first time they visited, got a tent?
Yeah, both. And I think that's a good sign. You know, we think of Salem and its tourist industry, and I don't think we want to move in that direction fully. I think we want Beverly to remain highly livable and not as crowded. Like, I think a lot of us like that. But to be able to bring people in to, shop in our stores and make use of our beaches alongside us and be part of something like the Arts Fest is good. That helps keep our downtown vibrant, but also means that, we don't have to pack in more apartments all over the city. We can keep a vibrant downtown. We can keep our waterfront access. We can keep our open space and parks, and just think about how we are using them, inviting people in, and making the best use of our city's resources.
Well, we've gone through a major overhaul of Rantoul Street, and there have been comments, plus and minus, about the number of condos and apartment houses that are built there, and the kind of businesses that are filling in the first floors of most of these units. Yeah. And the question now comes, what are we going to do about Cabot Street? Yeah. Does that get, in your mind, does that get the same treatment? Or do we do something different on Cabot Street? And you mentioned the concept of a vibrant downtown. Way back when, you went downtown to shop. There was 2 department stores, shoe store, butter, and there was literally a butter and egg store too. There are a lot of things downtown that aren't there anymore. They got moved out to the mall. The malls are disintegrating because of Amazon and Walmart and a few other things. So that raises the question of, what is a vibrant downtown, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're creating it right now, and I think it's part of what that difference between the development on Rantoul Street and the development on Cabot shows, I think, the two sides of where development is going. So I think on Cabot Street, you see we're widening the sidewalks, creating space for people to be in public together. A lot of the storefronts are filling in with, small local businesses that are, I think, a response to what you're describing about the flight of commercial to malls and now to, online shopping and retail kind of going in that direction. I think there's a reaction to that people want to meet the person who made the thing that they're buying. They want to be able to go into a small shop and get advice. They want that experience back. And they want to know the people that they're shopping from. So while there are some things that are always going to be more convenient online and we benefit from that, I think we see on Cabot Street the small business renaissance is going well, and that's despite COVID, and I think we only have more room to grow. So, where you see there apartments being added unobtrusively in the backs of buildings versus the really, tall, high-density, transit-oriented development on Rantoul, I think they complement each other well. Yeah. And Rantoul has allowed us to bring in some great businesses as well that need a little more space, that, can operate in that kind of structure differently. Some great restaurants going in, the breweries. So, I think we need both of those. And I think our downtown is a great example of how you can, cater to a lot of different needs within the city.
Well, what's coming up very shortly is a discussion about the city charter.
Yes.
It's been going on in the background rather secretively. Nobody knows what they're doing. The only words that seem to have come out of about a 4-year term for mayor, and no mentions of term limits for the mayor or for the city council or anything like that. But the other thing that concerns me is, as you mentioned, a lot of these functions are part of the mayor's job and the mayor's entourage, if you will. And the question comes back to what's the function of the city council? And so far, with the strong mayor, weak city council, the only authority that you would have as a councilor is you can veto the budget. And that seems to be rather an extreme move. Mm-hmm. So my thinking is to reach a compromise on a lot of these issues, you need to have something in between.
Yeah.
What would you be comfortable with as having something less dramatic than a veto, mm-hmm. but a little more effective than, hey, by the way, could you?
You're right. And just asking nicely. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up because I got to serve on the Charter Review Committee. And you're right, we did not have as much public involvement as any of us would have liked because of COVID. Only a few of our meetings were in person after things opened back up. And we wrapped up the meeting process in early July and put together a set of recommendations that are now going to the City Council. So you can get recordings of our meetings or read the minutes on the city website, but the city website is a little difficult to navigate. So yes, I recognize that can feel...
That's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. So glad to have this opportunity, too, to share a little bit more about what we were discussing. And one of the ideas, well, so there are a couple of things. One is that the City Council does have a really powerful oversight and public discussion role throughout the year, even separate from the budget process. The City Council has the authority to call department heads, public servants who work for us and ask, what's going on in your department? What do you need? What plans do you have? Are you hearing these calls from our neighbors about this issue? What's your plan to address them? And we've seen some good examples of that lately where issues that were bubbling up around rats, around whether trash cans are going back in our parks, came up as public hearings to the City Council, a chance to kind of hear what's going on. And I think a lot of people, maybe they didn't change their minds about, the city's performance on those issues, but they now understand all of the different things that those departments are trying to balance and can see a way forward. So there's that.
You
but
mentioned
also
these issues in today's paper. There's an article about the drainage problems coming out of North Beverly.
Yeah, and I've heard similar concerns in a few other parts of town while I've been
I guess
walking.
One of the things that was buried in the article when you read down through it is we had the same problem in 2011.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be some mechanism to prioritize problems like flooding.
Yeah.
Your basement gets flooded and you get wiped out. They quoted one lady saying it's a $25,000 bill.
Yeah.
So having this happen over and over again, I mean, this is the point I'm getting to. Of the City Council hears this stuff firsthand.
Yeah.
And, we've got a mayor's, one of his entourage is the constituent advocate. There's somebody there in the mayor's office that's supposed to listen to you, but you usually go to your city councilor, your ward councilor, or at large.
Or both.
And how do you make something happen? And that's, I think, one of the issues that should come out of this Charter Commission, some sort of mechanism to strengthen your position.
Yeah, so there are a couple, a few kind of small things around just how the City Council and the mayor's office communicate and how they get and share information. But the one that I'm most excited about actually is related to the budget, but is about really setting priorities as a city. So we were really grappling with this issue of, the City Council collectively represents the whole city, ward by ward and at large, has that really deep constituent service mentality, is really kind of on that front line of getting information about what the city needs and is supposed to be about setting the overall direction that the administration is then executing. But you're right, in the charter, it's not always clear how and why to do that. So we talked a lot about ways we could strengthen that agenda setting role, that prioritization role early on in the process. And with help from some consultants from UMass Boston and from city staff, drew on an idea that has worked in other cities, which is to have a kind of budget priority setting meeting early in the year, so before the mayor develops the budget with department heads, that includes the city council, the school committee, who are also elected to represent the whole city in the priority setting and policy setting for the schools, and the department heads in a public setting to say, here are all the things we're hearing. These need to be included in the budget. And then so that's one of our recommendations, is build that into the charter, that the budget process kicks off with a public meeting involving all these elected officials who can represent their constituents' needs and start to hash out those priorities. What that would allow us to do is then, instead of just having that sort of line item veto power at the end, to be able throughout the process to say, look, we agreed up front this was a priority, where is it in the budget? And really have that right from the get-go. So I'm excited about that idea. I think it's one that the rest of the committee was excited about. We've featured it in the report that's going to the city council, and hopefully it will be adopted as an amendment to the charter.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned early on about the modifications that are being made to Cabot Street, widening the sidewalk, the bump outs.
Yeah.
That gets to be a dual-edged kind of thing. That, yeah, if you build out spaces so that you can have outdoor dining, which is really what most of these things turn out to be, you're taking away parking spaces.
Yeah.
You're taking away pedestrian access, because how do you walk through a dining room if you're going from here to there, kind of thing. Yeah. So I think this is an area, I think, again, the city council needs to set some standards or some goals of how much difference do we want to make to the city, and at the same time review it after a while and say, well, that didn't work so well, let's try something else and undo that. Yeah. So how do you get this stuff going? This keeps me coming back to changes to the charter, getting more authority and more responsibility in the city council, other than sitting back and waiting until the budget's dropped in your lap and, well, I don't like that, but yeah.
But it's there. I have no intention of being that kind of city councilor, because I think while there are some things that we're recommending be strengthened in the charter, I think a lot of it is also about how you use the authority that's already there. And so for something like, in street projects, that's something that can be an ongoing annual discussion. And, I live downtown, parking can be hard. I also really enjoy the fact that we have that sort of walking and biking priority as well. And, I know there were some concerns about the lack of bike lanes on Cabot. So it's really designed to slow down cars and to make walking and spending time on the sidewalk easier. But then found out part of the thinking there was that Rantoul Street has great bike lanes. So if you're really just trying to power through downtown on your bike, Rantoul Street is there. Yeah. And so thinking about how we, you're not ever going to please everyone, but how we keep having those conversations. Because like you said, it's not we made this decision and then we're done. It's we made this decision, we see how it works. We see if it will work in other parts of the city or if it's just appropriate for that one street. And we keep, I think revisiting past questions is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it can feel like you're just rehashing an argument for no reason, but I think sometimes it's really helpful to evaluate what worked and what didn't. And that is definitely a city council role already with the current charter authority.
Well, part of the driver behind a lot of this traffic problem is there's an awful lot of stoplights on Rantoul Street. So if you want to zip through the city, you take Cabot Street to avoid the stoplights. And now we're into a situation, the traffic is getting to be a little too heavy and too aggressive on Cabot. We got to build out these things, the bump outs at the corners, and slow them down.
Yeah.
We're just sort of going around in circles. And speaking of going in circles, I can remember way back when that one of the master plans said, make Cabot Street one way and going north and Ruintoul Street one way going south. And that appears several times and never was
Didn't go anywhere.
implemented.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there are issues that are involved with that. And one of the questions I like to ask is, what do you think about getting rid of the mayor altogether and going to a city manager?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about that in the Charter Review Committee too. Didn't spend a whole lot of time on it because we were all kind of in agreement that for a city this size, you know, the trade-offs between the professionalization of that role in a city manager and the accountability to voters of a mayor, just, you know, really, we felt it was really important to stay with the mayoral system, that it has served us well.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the city this size comment? I don't understand.
Yeah, well, so the manager system is much more common in towns, like in smaller communities, in part because they don't have the budget to have a fully staffed city hall in quite the same way that we do, and in part because the elected officials often can't be full-time either. So it's sort of a whole different animal. And so having one person who is a highly qualified professional who's going to, you know, keep the books straight and keep the wheels moving in city operations is more important. For a city our size, we have the luxury in many ways. We're pooling a lot of taxes to be able to provide services to a lot of people. And so we're able to pay department heads who have those skills, have a finance team, you know, are able to fill those professional roles, and have a mayor who really is a political figure, not in the, I think sometimes people hear political and think like partisan politics or things like that. Yes, but political in the best sense of, you know, responding to the people and setting priorities for the policies that govern the city. And while it is the like chief executive officer role in some ways, it's not running a business. It's running a government, and that means being responsive to people. The best way to be responsive to people is to ask them to vote for you.
Yeah, and that can get to be a very long discussion because a lot of people like me came out of the business world where you're used to this kind of a hierarchy.
Yeah. No.
And at the same time, I'm also used to the military where you've got a really strict hierarchy and you know who's in charge of everything, and nothing gets to be sloughed off very easily. But
well, and our charter does do a good job of making it clear now what is the mayor's responsibility, what are they accountable for, what is the city council accountable for, what is the school committee and the superintendent accountable for. But you're right, government is a little messier because we're trying to, you know, solve problems for an entire city that has a lot of people with a lot of diverse views. And so you need that kind of give and take.
That gets us back to the whole discussion of what's the character of Beverly, you know. Is it the farms? Is it Ward 3? You know, the disparity between those two is just typical of the city. And you go out to North Beverly and you get a different characteristics. So, it's a balancing act. It's more like a juggling act kind of thing. But at the same time, you know, we get into some issues like this whole relationship between what's actually happened in Beverly compared to what's happening in the world around us, and the reaction to that. Does it really solve a Beverly problem, or is it just looking good for the press?
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the issues that, for instance, the school committee 3 or 4 years ago now decided they're going to have a sanctuary district, and the city council voted not to have a sanctuary city. And at the same time, we've got diversity managers in both the city and in the school district. So again, we're getting down to the issue, I guess, of what are the real problems in Beverly that we need to solve?
Yeah, and I think it is the responsibility of the city council to serve the city on local issues. And, you know, I think the reason that the city is investing now in making our institutions more inclusive and more equitable is because the population of the city has already changed, and we need to serve the people who are here now. And, and what Beverly will look like in the future. So I'm happy to see that movement nearly keeping pace with the changes already happening in our city. But I think you're right that local politics is not about big slogans. It's not about what's happening across the whole country. It's about, filling potholes and educating students and serving seniors. And those things do change over time as the population changes. But the core of that work really is about listening to your neighbors, hearing what people need, hearing what people are willing to offer too. So, like you were saying, we have these really distinct neighborhoods that, each have different commercial districts, each have different kind of feels to them. And those are ideas that can be shared across the city, what's working in one neighborhood, what one neighborhood association has done. And so I think there are a lot of needs across the city that we have to balance, but there are also a lot of opportunities and resources that we can share, which to me is what's so exciting about the job, to get to tap into all of that and connect people.
Well, I think you start to get into this whole issue of, we want to make downtown accessible for bikes and pedestrians and cars too.
Yeah.
So the city is into this complete streets routine.
Yeah.
I'm thinking we need to have something like a complete city routine where you recognize the fact that Cummings Center is a tremendous advantage to the city.
Yeah.
The work they're doing out on Dunham Road, the expansion in that area.
Yeah.
Cherry Hill is coming up for grabs. Something needs to be done there. Cell signaling is expanding, which is a thing. New England Biolabs is supposedly coming back. So we have a industrial base in the city. We have a very large academic base based on the medical profession in the city. So it's a complete city.
Yeah.
And there's not a one-size-fits-all kind of answer to this thing. So we got to the point where we've been having a half an hour of fun, and it's now your turn to tell the audience why they should vote for you for the Councilor at Large. And since there isn't a primary, they only get one shot at it, right?
That's true. So I want to say a big thank you. This has been fun, and I feel like I've learned something just sitting here. But yeah, also to the audience, looking forward to November 2nd, and really looking forward to all the conversations between now and then. I'm really grateful to everyone who's taken the time at events around the city, or when I've knocked on your door or called, to just share what you're thinking about, because that's why I want to be involved in city government in Beverly, because as George said, we have a lot going for us here. We have a complete city to celebrate. And so I want to, step into the role of City Councilor at Large, to be able to keep all those things going, to hear your ideas for improvement, to start to implement them, to work closely with the school committee, with the mayor, with other city leaders in and out of elected office. And I look forward to earning that vote by November 2nd.
Good, thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And we're going to continue to have these kinds of discussions with the candidates at large and for the other wards that are being contested, and the school committee also. There's a couple of contested races there. And one of the important things is, if you think I forgot to ask the right question, at the end of the show, there's going to be the credits, and my email address shows up. Send me an email with the question you think I should have asked, or the candidate you think you would like to hear again. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We'll do more of these, and most important of all, be at the primary and November 2nd, get out and vote. Thank you.